Oh man. Creatives, community, kind folks out there. Hello. This is RPG with DBJ. And on this Thursday, we will be going deep dive into Melisandre, the Red Priestess from Game of Thrones. This week, we've been picking various characters, some minor, some major, from the uh, Game of Thrones television show from HBO, for the purpose of finding out what it is we can use, abuse, and reskin, steal for our RPG games. And of course, we're doing this in celebration of the fact that the last season of Game of Thrones is coming up. And I thought I'd pick a character that uh, isn't quite beloved, but many of us would probably want to see this character suffer theirs, as many of the Game of Thrones characters are. And I thought I'd pick Melisandre to be the one to give us some RPG fuel, some RPG flavor. And of course, you do not need to know the show or have read the books to learn anything from these discussions. So a summary of who Melisandre is: she is a Red Priestess, and she worships the Lord of Light in this world where the old gods have kind of faded away, and there are a new set of gods, the seven gods in the main city of Westeros, in the main culture of Westeros. So the Lord of Light represents light and fire and is quite misunderstood, and in many ways the interpretation of the worship of the Lord of Light plays quite an important role, not only in Melisandre's storyline, but in the storyline of those who find themselves to be worshipers and the faithful in the Lord of Light's progress throughout the story. And so her being a Red Priestess and worshiper of the Lord of Light is her character. In essence, she's if you want to go for Dungeons and Dragons, she's a cleric of extreme faith. And that's putting it lightly. Now, also with Melisandre's character, she is extremely enigmatic. It is rumored that she's hundreds of years old. She has a presence and a beauty and a way of her talking that draws people to her. She's very mysterious in terms of her origins. Some, I believe in the book, some claim that she used to be a slave and suffered quite a lot before she found the Lord of Light. It's possible that the Lord of Light and her becoming a Red Priestess had a lot to do with her gaining her freedom, and that may also be a great motivator for her desire to serve the Lord of Light's motivations and purposes and visions that she gets. So in the story, Melisandre has a number of mysterious and somewhat arcane traits that are, just because of how the Game of Thrones storyline goes, both the books and the television show are completely unexplained. And so I feel like both her being this cleric, this priestess, this faithful person, and having traits that are like unexplained, I feel are the two things that we really can pull from. So let's dive deep into the visions she gets from the Lord of Light. So she's completely convinced of the information she receives from the Lord of Light as a Red Priestess, even though that information is very vague and not necessarily given to her in a manner in which a mortal human being should or could understand it. But because of her both faith and possibly arrogance, because she may feel that she's the only one that's the true worshiper of the Lord of Light, she does things that are quite brutal. For example, not just brutal, but somewhat sadistic, and even like somewhat demonic even. So for example, one of the characters, uh, a, a Baratheon noble, feels that he belongs on the throne and he's the rightful heir to the throne, which in many ways, from the information gained, is correct. And so in her vision, she feels like, oh wow, this individual really should be on the throne. So of course he's married, he has children, and that has nothing to do. She's like, that's not important to what the Lord of Light is telling me to do. So of course she seduces him, has sex with him, and a extremely short time later, opens up her legs and gives birth to a shadow demon with this gentleman's face on it. And that shadow demon proceeds to shadow its way past enemy lines to his enemy, which happens to be another individual who also feels that they should be on the throne, and kills that person in their tent. And of course, this is seen by some witnesses, a shadow demon, and of course, no one in this low magic world thinks that shadow demons even exist, as magic starts to return to the world. Excuse me. But that's just one of the things, the magical things she's done. She's looked into fires and been able to receive images like an oracle, whether it's visions of the future or the past, or look into other people's souls, or to try to divine the truth, as well as the fact that there's even a scene in the television show where there's some kind of a glamour or something over her, and she removes a necklace. And when she removes the necklace from her very smooth and enticing naked body, all of a sudden there's an old hag is left there, and she decides to walk away from the mirror and get into the bed, and she's got long gray hair, and she's kind of bent and stoop shouldered and stuff, and her skin is sagging and liver spotted and all that kind of stuff, which they never explain. Like, is that part of her magic? Was it the necklace that did it? Is it a curse or a blessing or something? They never explain that as well. And to top all of that off, a young lady, she sacrifices the child, or she convinces this would-be king to sacrifice his own daughter in service to the Lord of Light, as well as many others, on a beach. And his military men are looking around as he sacrifices his own daughter because, well, rationalization, right? What's the life of one plus a bunch of other people that he has no connection to? What's their lives compared to the lives of the nation, when of course she's told me I'm destined to be the king, and the returning mysterious figure that's supposed to be this legendary figure to come back, blessed by the Lord of Light. So of course it's me. So she convinces him of that, and of course she steps back. She's all smiley, like, I know what I'm doing, and of course sacrifices the girl, and it doesn't work, right? And once her faith starts to become shattered, and she realizes that the person that she's been pushing this entire time gets killed in battle, and everything that she's wrought doesn't come to fruition. Someone who really has no faith in the Lord of Light at all, and her faith is broken. He, is begged by a gentleman named Davos to bring back the life of Jon Snow, a character in the show. And she's like, I can't do that. I don't have that power. And of course, her faith is shattered. She prays over the body, and then he comes back to life. And she's just like, really? Like, I don't realize that. So long story short, what is it can we learn from this? And that is that, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, being a cleric in Dungeons and Dragons, and you can associate this also with like druids and warlocks, paladins even fit into this category, that just making up the character and having this character having faith or giving their abilities from a divine source or a greater power does not necessarily grant that character also a perfect understanding of what it is that the desires of that greater being want from them. They may be a small cog in a big machine, and that cog doesn't know how the rest of the machine works. And if they stop running, the rest of the machine might fall and fumble, and it's their job to keep things moving along. As a matter of fact, their life in the long run of these outer beings, whether they are gods or spirits or elder beings or what have you, whatever they are, fiends and celestials or what have you, their lifespan may not matter. As a matter of fact, it might be important for them to fail or to ruin something or bring upon death and destruction, just so that 5 generations from now, others can learn from it. So while you may have clerics in the game, and mind you, none of this has any mechanical effect, right? These are things that should be built by the game master and with the help of the players to find out exactly what it is. What place do the gods have, if any, in your setting? What place do warlock patrons and these powerful beings, what purpose do they have? What story are they there to tell? Is it a story of something being told with perfection, with a complete understanding that yes, the PC is supposed to perform a specific function in the story, and they are told everything about it? Or are they given very vague, go to the mountain pass on the day of the dead when the sun is at its highest, and when your shadow touches upon the black monolith, it is there you will find your destiny? And it's like, okay, kind of vague, and I kind of know where I need to be, and sure, you've kind of given me some situations, but am I supposed to understand everything? So the oracles and information and those kind of things might be in your game very, very vague, and play it very vague, especially if you as a game master are like, I don't know where this is leading me. I don't know. So there are also quite a number of spells in Dungeons and Dragons, like auguries and those kind of things, that give characters information as to what to do. Mythos, what's going on there, man? Hello. Thank you for joining in. The other thing about characters that have faith and power is how does that power manifest? And it doesn't always have to manifest the same way each time, or it doesn't need to manifest exactly the same way across the board. So for example, in this world, the Lord of Light speaks to them through fire. And so it could be that in your world, to give some flavor and to give some traits that really make things unique for your world, maybe those players must start a large bonfire or a brazier of flames and look into the flames to discover information, or to quote unquote gain back their spell slots during their short and long rests and such. Whereas maybe another divine being, they have to look in pools of water, or they find messages written in the threads of spiders in the corners and eaves of buildings, or spread across the leaves in a jungle and what have you. Or it could be the patterns and the sounds that flocks of birds make overhead, or given to them in their dreams. Or maybe they have to meditate and or go into a sweat lodge, or flagellate themselves, and maybe there's bloodletting or something, or they are possessed by something and they speak in tongues and their body convulses as they foam at the mouth and scream, and as they run around in circles or what have you. You can have any number of these things, and many of them can be specific to one specific deity or greater power, or it could be to a pantheon. So kind of like the Greek gods and the Titans that they imprisoned, maybe the Greek gods communicate with individuals in a specific manner, but the Titans communicate in another manner, or the difference between fiends and celestials and what have you. And you can even incorporate other things where the information that they obtain is from tarot cards, or the throwing of bones, or the rolling of dice, or reading of the palms, or the bumps on reading the palms and lines in the palms of the hand, or the bumps on someone's forehead or the back of their head, or what have you. Ouch. So how the gods, and I say the gods in very general, the deities, communicate with your players may be a thing. And then also adding in like 1 to 3 traits that are specific to the worship of those deities, what they dress, what their holy symbol looks like, what is expected of them. Is everyone bald, male, female, or other? Like, do they shave all of the hair off of their bodies, both on top of their head and their face, including their eyebrows and their nether regions? Or do they wear chains around their bodies and a type of shackles that are emblematic of their religion? Do they walk barefoot? Do they give away their money? Are they tattooed, and are runes and religious things tattooed all over their body? All of those things, even something as minor as do they have a graying beard? They better, especially if the great powers are talking to me. Exactly. And there could even be something strangely arcane about them. Maybe horses do not like the presence of the worshipers of the Lord of Light, or maybe their eye color changes, or it could be a presence that surrounds them, a glow, or even a translucent image that's 20 feet tall of like the god of war, or thunder, or storms, or the earth, or life, that surrounds them when they cast their spells. Just something that makes them unique. And of course, what duties do they have to serve, right? Do they have to plant a tree or things? Or animals wet their beds, which is not normal. Those are the wives' tale things. Horses sweating, animals wetting their beds, birds flying backwards, milk souring, mirrors cracking. Those are the much darker things that happen, where cracks appearing in stone, or blood in the bottom of oatmeal, appearing at the bottom of oatmeal, or someone waking up being covered in maggots or something. Like, you can, if you want to go darker with those kind of things, sure. That not necessarily that everything has to be dark, but yes, that is very possible. And one of the things that I believe storyline you can really play with, especially if your players are willing to do it, is that they could be completely convinced of their actions and going so far as to commit atrocities in your world, and then realizing that they were wrong, or that the information that they got from that they received was a misinterpretation or whatnot. Mizu says, or have a third rock from the sun thing. Who knows what I missed that show. Who knows what kinds of motivations. Incoming message, then sneeze. If you want to play silly with it, and true, it's the silliness is like, I've got an incoming message from far away, achoo. Or it could be like a fever dream. It could be that they get stomach cramps or something, or they vomit when they've gotten, when their power is given to them, especially if it's like a fiendish power. It could be sores that open up on their skin, and they pop open, and maggots and flies pour out, and it's, their eyes turn red, and they crumple over in pain, and then they up as their body turns red from like an internal heat, and steam rises up from their fingertips, and smoke breathes out of their mouth. And then a moment later, they recover and shake it off, and they're like, you know, Demogorgon or Baal or Amon or Orcus or something is just giving me their, you know, their power or something, and I must serve them. So also maybe sometimes the path that they're sent on might not be in a line with the player characters, not necessarily against them, but they might be told, for example, you will meet someone with a red flower in their lapel. Follow any instruction they give you. And so along the way, they might come into a small town and, you know, 50%, there's a festival going on and 50% of the people are wearing flowers because it's the festival of the flowers. And they're like seeing everyone with a red flower in their little lapel. And they're just like, what do I do? Like, what the hell just happened? And that might be like a side motivator for the player character. Like, I don't know. And so maybe a shopkeep comes up to them and goes, hey, would you like to buy some fresh fruit? And they have a red lapel, and they might go, maybe I should follow what this person says. Or they might meet a noble that, you know, along the way that's in this town, you know, and meets the player character and is like, welcome to our town and whatnot, and embraces them and goes, maybe that's the person I should be, you know, following and following their instructions. So making things a little bit vague and letting the player characters make the choice of whether their success or failure pushes along the desires of this other worldly being. And then, of course, also having them be given instructions that might run counter to their own morality, whether it's like sacrificing. It doesn't have to be as deep as sacrificing someone or murdering someone, you know, killing children or what have you. But it could be a vow of silence or making amends or something of that nature. Spending 101 gold pieces to rebuild a temple or something. And they're like, well, listen, we've got to go after the bad guy. I don't have time to sit around this town and build this temple. And this greater being is like, I've given you instructions to spend 3 weeks in a day to help build this temple. And they're like, man, I don't want to ignore that order, but I've got more important things to do. So I'm going to ignore it. Mythos says, have an advanced mage on a different plane of existence appear before players as an image or hologram light. We're talking God tier. Yeah, of course. And of course, nothing needs to be, like I said, nothing needs to be a God. It could be like a God tier wizard or a Cthulhu-like being or a very powerful dragon, an elemental force that's speaking to this character. It could even be something somewhat technological, even in a medieval world or even in an advanced world. It could be an advanced AI with an entire moon that's been hollowed out, and the entire inside of it is a computer has been devoted over to calculations or something, and it's got so much great power it can make wormholes or something. It could be a clockwork being of great power constructed by Hephaestus or Vulcan or whatnot, and it happens to be communicating with you. Deadman says, just hope they don't go all murder hobo on the subject with the red flower, which I just thought about. I didn't say it, but I did think about that. And it's true. They could go all murder hobo and go, well, I was told to do it. It's not my fault, which is a thing, right? I mean, how many times, maybe I'm hitting upon something that's a little bit sensitive in our own world, but how many people rationalize the death, the murder, mutilation, the torture, and death of innocent people in the promotion of their own religious desires throughout our own history, and rationalize it away like, well, I'm just doing it in service of my faith. I don't have any guilt over doing that. And even confronting others who are of the same faithful background, whether it's considered a religion or a pagan religion or what have you, or even, serving a greater being, and then finding out that they serve it in a different way or disagree on how it's being served or are given similar instructions by this other person. And maybe the player is even like, I thought I was the only one. And 37 people show up with the exact same instructions to do the exact same thing. And they're just like, who are you? Like, well, who are you? Mythos says, in my first campaign, excuse me, campaign, I played a best friend, Tyler, dropped dropped a fucking baby down a well. We were playing a good campaign, but he was chaotic neutral, borderline psycho, made that full psycho. Yeah. Now, of course, we know there are players out there who find any and all excuses to do some of the most sociopathic and psychopathic actions out there. I know. But again, that does not change the story element. That just happens to be that player who wants to use that as an excuse to be a sociopath or a psychopath, right? That has nothing to do with the rules. It has nothing to do with alignment. It has nothing to do with character creation. It's, but again, the other thing is that Game of Thrones, whether you watch the show or not, or are a fan of the show or not, or even a fan of a particular character like a Melisandre, one of the things that Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin has done in his storyline is character growth, major character growth. Mitho says it was fun, but caused us problems. It was great though. Yeah, in hindsight, sometimes you can laugh at it at the time, especially if you're younger. You look back at some of the games that we've run, and you always have that one player or one or two players, and you're just like scratching your head, like, dude, really? Like we were having, we took this super serious, and now you have to go over here and do your, your reenact your best scenes from, The Dark Knight and being the Joker. But okay, I guess. But yeah, the idea that a player could fall into and out of favor with their divine patron or personage, or that the player themselves may fall in and out of favor in their faith, and even come to the realization that maybe they were doing things that were against their faith, but they still had some of those abilities, or flavoring their abilities as if they are being doing things in favor or out of favor with their divine patron as well. For example, when Melisandre never questioned the fact that a shadow demon came out of her hoo-hoo after having sex with this dude to achieve his goals, even though the entire time she's always talking about the Lord of Light. And it's like, well, a shadow demon doesn't sound like something the Lord of Light would create, except that, you never questioned it, right? It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense in a strange way. Mythos, vaguage. They're being vagaries, having not having to answer every single thing. The gods, greater beings, mysterious, powerful beings, whether they're Q from Star Trek or something like that, they don't need to answer. Oh yeah, vajayjay. Yeah, the hoo-hoo. Yeah, coming out of the vajayjay. Yeah, listen, you don't need to answer everything, even as a game master. Like, you don't need to have the answer to everything, and these greater beings don't need to speak to the player characters one-on-one. Even if the player characters beg, like, what does this message mean? The gods are like, look, I gave you a message. I gave you a blue disc, and I gave you an eclipse, and your blood now. I wrote down the word escape on the ground or something. I mean, that's pretty apparent what that means, right? Player characters like, I have no idea what the hell this means. They're like, look, I got more important things to do. I'm Thor. I've got storms to create. See ya. You know what I mean? Mythos says, so we are mature here, right? Yeah. But yeah, there's some, I suppose, if you want to go down a dark path of how does your how do your spells, what does your spell powers look like, and it's like, well, This time I'm going to vomit up a snake, and another time I'm going to like, crap out an ooze out of my ass and use it as my use it as my healing salve. Other players are like, please don't wipe your feces on my wounds, even though that might be how their cure wounds spell works or something. Yeah, you could go kind of sick with that. Although you could even go down an even darker path when you have the I worship the Lord of Light. Let me spread some of my 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 flavorful goodness all over your body to heal you as I pleasure myself over the injured player characters or something. That'd be kind of nasty too as well. Not sure how long that campaign would last, but I suppose you could do that at least once. Or as a matter of fact, I think you could only do it once. So anyway, yeah, Melisandre is this enigmatic figure. She's mysterious. You don't know where she came from or what she's about. As an NPC, she probably works better than a player character. And as an NPC, she could be someone who is kind of vague. You could even have, if you want to, if you really absolutely positively must put a cleric in the party as an NPC, I suppose she can go along, and giving her kind of a mysterious dark path to her may make the players not rely on this NPC too much, and because that can happen by accident, where this Mary Sue GMPC happens to be within the player character's party. So you don't want a character that is good at everything, knows everything, and survives every combat encounter. Maybe she's just better in the background. And by making her a little bit standoffish, as well as someone the players kind of don't trust, might work to your benefit as a game master. Because if one day one of the players like slices her throat or pushes her off a cliff or smashes her brains in, you're just like, well, she kind of deserves it. Mythos says, I almost an OCD superstitious spellcaster that wiggles his or her ears, spin on a spot, and so on before casting a spell. Oh, I almost want an OCD superstitious spellcaster. I get it. That wiggles his or her ears, spins on a spot, and so on before casting a spell. Yeah, you could, if you want to get silly, and if you and your group have decided that, we're not taking this serious, sure, you could absolutely do the I make the fart sound under my armpit with my with my cupped hand or something like that, or I roll my eyes into the back of my head, or I flip my eyelids upside down, or what have you, or I whistle, or I make fart noises with my mouth. Dead Man says monkey. Yeah, the OCD spellcaster. Monk's all powerful, but everyone's just sitting around like, really, dude, do you have to wash your hands yet again? He's like, well, it's dirty out here. Like, yeah, because it's a swamp. You decided to come into a swamp with us. You're like, well, you put a blindfold on me. Yeah. Mythos says, I was thinking more of a character flaw. Yeah, of course. We once had a player character that had a character that was like very OCD, didn't want to get dirty, like to wash themselves, and we ended up fighting like an intellect devourer, which is like it's the other white meat, powerful magic creature in the Dungeons and Dragons world, other than like illithids and dragons and such, and liches, and the player character was like, I want to collect its blood, its brain matter, because it's basically a big giant brain with claws and has psychic powers. And we would look at him like, your character would never reach his hand into like a brain matter and stuff. And he was like, you're right. And he's like, oh man, that would be so sweet for my character. But he's like, you're right, I would never touch a thing like that. They're like, yeah, well, yeah. Mythos says, thinking more of a character flaw or quirk. Yeah, whatever. I mean, remember, like in most games, there are no penalties for having limitations and quirks. That's a role-playing thing. And, so just having fun with it is a great idea. Also, with a character like Melisandre, with her deep devotion to these religious paths and whatnot, and gaining that power, you can play. You don't need to be go 0 to 60 with the idea that hey, if I do something that's against my religion, I'm going to lose my powers. That used to be a thing back in the day with paladins being lawful good. Like, well, if you steal a loaf of bread, it's not a lawful good act. You lose your paladin powers. And it was just like everyone's rolling their eyes, like just waiting for that player character to stumble and fall. And Mythos says, if anything, it fleshes out the character story with like quirks and character flaws, and that's exactly right. So playing with a paladin or a druid or a cleric or a warlock that goes against the very nature or their very faith, at least temporarily, or start to fall down a different path, why not make it a gradual thing? Why not like Melisandre, queefing out a shadow demon from between her legs? Like, why not have the paladin, instead of gaining a spell like cure wounds or something, you pull that player aside and says, oh, by the way, one of your spell slots is the power spell slot darkness. Like, darkness, that's not in my, I worship this Lord of Light or something. Yeah, but when this time you got the power darkness, and like, darkness, I wonder what that means. Or maybe they do something that's completely against their religion and nothing happens. And maybe others in their order know that they did something against their religion, like the paladin breaking the law and stealing the food to feed the homeless. Yeah, they broke the law and they fed the homeless, right? And maybe their religious order is like, you violated our tenets. And that character's like, dude, I'm still filled with holy light, so apparently I didn't particularly do anything wrong. Or maybe maybe that player character is like waiting for the hammer to fall and it doesn't fall down on them, or something happens that flavors their abilities differently. Maybe their powers start talking to them. So when that druid summons an elemental, maybe that elemental talks back to them. It's like, the earth elemental that the druid summons or something speaks to them just before disappearing, and it's like, I have served you today, but know that the giants, being of stone or whatever have you, the stone giant of the mountain pass wishes for you to travel to the valley entrance and give double down on your loyalty to the earthen elementals, for we have found you wanting, or something like that, right? Something weird. You must walk with your feet unshod and walk upon the jagged earth for 101 days, never once complaining about the pain and suffering that your feet must feel to make amends for what you have done against our kind, for I don't know, summoning the earth, the fire and the water elementals, or something silly like that. Whatever, going down a path. You know how I do. Mythos says, depends on the act, I suppose. I remember you said this. I enjoyed this speech. I don't remember. You're referring to something that even I don't remember. I don't remember what I said last 5 minutes, dude. Mythos says, gods do have opposites, don't they? In many times and in many pantheons, there is an opposite to those gods, and maybe a player character is being recruited. The paladin that slowly and surely has their spell slots being replaced by, one day they get darkness, maybe the next day they get some kind of drain life and are able to summon fire or something, and it comes out as a black fire that burns the soul of their enemies, and you're just like, what the hell is this about? It could be them slowly being recruited into another warlock patron, another god, another elemental service or something like that. The druid that serves the earth gods wakes up in their tent, in a pool of water. Maybe they're being recruited. Maybe they're being punished by a god from the opposite, as well as, why not use some of the creatures that are in your gaming world as messengers from these other powerful beings? In the legends of many of the gods, Greek and Norse gods and Egyptian gods and such, were related to animals. The Egyptian gods, many of them were animal headed, whether they were jackals or hawks, vultures, snakes, scorpions, and so maybe the player character ends up becoming a magnet for vultures circling overhead, or scorpions appearing in their bed sheets, or ravens circling overhead as well, or alligators going after them specifically in a swamp. Uh, Having a 5-foot circle of storms of rain, a torrential rain and storm circling over their head, drenching them for 15 minutes or something, whatever. It could be something major or minor. Maybe they find mold in their backpack and no one else found mold in their backpack while they're in the desert. You could send little messages like that as well. It could be even more insidious. Religious runes carved in their flesh when they try to talk to their elder being, or they're struck blind temporarily. They vomit up their meal, and you look up the rules for not consuming enough food and suffering dehydration and starvation, or something like that. Like, you're like, well, I can summon food and water, sure, but then for other people, but you cannot consume anything yourself. Maybe their skin tone changes and they turn blue or purple or something. So playing with that idea, especially with the gods, and not making everything, specific. If someone's worshiping Thor doesn't have to specifically come down and go, listen, I want you to go to the ice cream shop, specifically get Rocky Road ice cream, get 3 scoops for your player characters, and serve 1 scoop to the elder dragon that's on the large mountain, and I'll see you later. Right? It doesn't have to be exactly like that. You can flavor things rather vaguely, even if you don't even understand the ramifications yet, and fill in the blanks with your player characters while they ruminate over why the paladin or the cleric or the druid now has 3 spells that normally are not from their chosen spell list, but maybe from their opposite divine being, maybe something that they've been fighting against this entire time. Deadman brings up, fun fact, no 2 Egyptian gods had the same animal head, excluding the ones with human heads. Wow, that's really cool and flavorful, right? Jackals, scorpions, cobras, cats. Trying to think of many of the Egyptian heads. Hawks, vultures. Oh, there's probably some others that I'm not thinking of for the Egyptians. For the Egyptians, but yes, and I that's pretty interesting. And you could, if you want to take that example, you could make your own pantheon and pick something like pick something that has a number of options in our real world, right? Like animals. Oh, the ibis. Yep, the ibis. Forgot about that. Is one. Thank you, Dead Man. And you could, if you want to do your own pantheon, you could pick things like bear, tiger, falcon, spider, panther, wolf. Like, you could make up your own pantheon by just picking something in our own world and picking the random items thereof. You could even do it by environment, mountain, coasts, deep sea, swamps, jungle, manatee. Oh man. Oh, great manatee spirit, speak to me. Manatee god chewing on a big cabbage. Well, 20 minutes later, maybe you should platypus. Oh man, kiwi, roadrunner. Oh man, oh, that's so bad. Duckbill platypus god. Wow. Although that might be pretty interesting. That maybe some of these stranger gods might be underestimated, man. I love it. The dodo. Wait, they're dead. Well, who's to say that the gods aren't dead? I grant you the power of flight. I do not grant you the power to land. So my character gets free flight. Yep. And it always ends. The spell always ends while you're at least 60 feet in the air. You got dive bomb everywhere. Why is your wizard wearing a helmet? Oh, you'll find out pretty soon, guys. That's pretty nasty. Anyway, getting back on track, man. When it comes to the gods, you know, you could also like I said, reflavor the animals, and of course, when it comes to like magic and science fiction and stuff, we have magic and science fiction monsters. So we have dire in D&D, we've got dire versions of those monsters. So if there's dire wolves and dire bears and dire falcons, giant eagles or something, they could be both allies and or enemies against that player character because of their function. In the gods, we have things like the Minotaur and horses and Pegasus and the Medusa are things that were created by the gods. And so the PCs may have a love-hate relationship with those creatures that exist in the world. You know, the Minotaur might have a deep discussion with the player character, for or against what they have. Yeah, Dead Man brings up dire rats, dire cats, dire snakes. Of course, hey, throw in that saber-toothed tiger, because your players hate dinosaurs in the game, but you're like, I'm gonna sneak one in here. Throw in a saber-toothed tiger, call it a dire tiger, and so what have you. Throw it in the game and make it an ally and or enemy. It depending on the actions of the player character. Who's to say that an owlbear doesn't lead the player character down a path towards redemption or something? And if the player character does something wrong or against their religious order or divine patronage or their patron or the instructions given to them by a clockwork or a scientific being, who's to say that thing won't then reverse on him? Dire macaw, dire bees. Come on, guys. I don't know. You could make the excuse that dire bees and dire wasps could be like Sturgis or something. Although you could be silly and make like dire parrots, dire peacocks, I guess, maybe. Oh man. But sure, I mean, playing with those things and not just making them, oh, here's another monster, go kill it. It has to kill you and roll some dice. Dire pigeons. Oh, yeah, pigeons are nasty, man. They probably carry around dire diseases. Plus, pigeons are bold too, man. Yeah. Let's see. They probably have a web or entangle spell cast out of their rear end when they crap on you. pretty nasty, with a side effect of make a con save or become diseased. Yeah, they're flying rats. Yeah, they sure are. I mean they're needed, right? They're the aerial versions of the, you know, waste removal in our world. So I suppose we need them. But man, they crap everywhere. Jesus. Anyway, also when it comes to adversaries, of course, Melisandre, that type of religious character who's completely convinced of their own importance, is a trope that we can always pull on. Now, if you don't want to just make it an evil, I'm a cult leader and I'm just evil and I'm going to summon an evil being, and you have to, you know, bash my head in before I summon the evil being. Dire manatees. I want 2 cabbages instead of 1. Give me my cabbages. And the gnome is like, of course I've got cabbages. I'm a gnome. We always have cabbages. but anyway, instead of the hand-wringing character, if I were to use a Melisandre styled character in your game, I would do it slowly. Maybe at least 3 gaming sessions where you have a religious being, a religious character. Dead Man says, my cabbages. Exactly. Watch out for the dire manatee. They're going to eat all our cabbages. Yeah, Metha says, we're just having fun here. Of course we are. But hey, okay, I'm going to go down that path. You did it. It's your fault. So you incorporate this character. Maybe there's a religious character who serves the Lord of Light, or reflavor being or whatever. And they help the player characters, right? They come back after their adventure, they're diseased, they're broken. We need healing in this town. And this person's really nice. They come along and heal them. Yeah, maybe they speak a little bit about their religion, but doesn't matter. They heal the player characters. They give them a quest. They send them on another quest. They pat them on the behind. Go have fun. Go out there. They come back. And, you know, each time they come back, they're fed maybe like a little cabbage soup. Little cabbages. Here, eat this. There's little cabbages. Like, sure, I guess. It's getting me a little gassy, but whatever. And again, this religious character helps them out again, and maybe is like an oracle, and maybe divines some of their magic items or whatever, and they become a relatable and reliable NPC. And then little by little, they start changing things. Maybe more and more people in the town start eating the cabbage soup, cabbage for breakfast. And okay, maybe they just have a lot of cabbage. Okay, it's tearing up my system, but whatever. And then by the third game, fourth game, fifth game, maybe people are getting a little glassy-eyed. Maybe this character this NPC who really is helping out the player characters, maybe something insidious is happening in this town, and they can't not they can't even get up in the morning without having more of this cabbage, right? Flavored, you know, salt and pepper. It's got to be baked or boiled or chopped or eaten raw or something. And the players are like, what? It's getting a little Stepford Wives in here. Like they're acting kind of like they're under a spell or something. And this religious person just doesn't even recognize it. They're like, no. They're, everyone who's a worshiper of the Lord of Light eats the cabbages. Here, NPCs, eat my cabbage soup. It'll heal you. And they're like, no, thank you. Yeah, cabbage for the cabbage god. Right, exactly. So you could make this person start to feel a little more creepy, as every time they see this individual, more and more things are happening that are strange in and around this town that they go to. Maybe the things that they say, maybe some of their powers. So let's, for example, let's use Melisandre, and they go, we're summoning up a big bonfire, and that fire cleanses the wounds of the PC. So they reach their hand into the fire, summon up a golden light, and that light heals their wounds. And they did that 2 or 3 times, but they come back, they reach their hand into the fire, and the fire turns blue or purple. They reach their hand in, and a black flame shoots up from their hand. Of course, the religious figure is like, whatever, that's what it's supposed to be. It's black. I notice it's black, but that's the way it's supposed to be. And they go to heal the character, and the character's like, whoa, wait a minute, don't touch me with your hand. You're like, but the Lord of Light is here to heal you. There's a black cold flame shooting up from your hand. Like, I'm about to punch you in the face if you touch me. Get away from me, dude. Like, what? You know, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, and maybe it does heal them, but maybe it leaves them with something else. Maybe a mark or a tattoo or something that these other strange creatures can smell. I love displacer beasts, and I love not reskinning them, but flavoring them for various purpose. Maybe the displacer beasts smell the touch of the black flame and sniff them out. And so anyone touched by the black flame could be hunted by these nasty displacer beasts and stuff. And they're just like, whoa, I was healed by them, and now I've got this weird, my fingernails are black, and you know, I've got these runes carved on my skin. What the hell is all that about? Caius of Glandry, what's going on there, man? Says, is that the arm of a child in the healing bonfire? Yeah, what is that? Poke it with a stick. Like, what the effing? Really, dudes? Like, what? But that is a great way, I think, to take that Melisandre character and like twist it a little bit, because as we know, don't fart on the fire, whatever you do. Yeah, something might come out of your rear end. You might not like it. But exactly, right? Like, you can, if you really want to make it insidious, have this NPC be a great boon to the characters, but little by little, they're doing something that, you know, or like Kaya says, maybe people are afraid that children are going missing, and this religious person's like, well, we don't know what's going on, but anyway, here's some more healing for you guys. And one of the player characters is like, yeah, is that a child's arm burning in that bonfire? What the hell? And, and hey, that paladin might be right in striking down that individual, unless the paladin and the cleric are of the same religion as this individual. And that begs the question, are they committing infanticide? Are they killing children? Sure. But they still have the power of the gods, the same power that the PCs have. That's a question. What is that about? Kaya says, I like Hunter's Mark for Displacer Beast. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a Displacer Beast fan, man. I just like, they Displacer Beasts and Blink Dogs are like they're like the outliers. And I like them being part of like a larger plot, whether they're like hunters from, an otherworldly being or something. And I like them being a little smarter than people give them credit for. Yeah. Mythos says, or a knowledge religion. Get them to roll insight or a knowledge religion. Of course you can. And again, who's to say what it costs for knowledge, right? The PCs may have not had to pay that cost, but what if they find out that a much greater cost is being paid by other members of their own faith, and then the paladin and the cleric in the party end up killing and murdering and taking down their own faction? What happens to them? Do they lose their powers? Are they given greater powers? Will the gods punish them? What if nothing happens to them? Are they doing right or wrong? Maybe they become enemies of their own religious order, yet they still have the same power as their religious order. Or maybe there is a religious faction that's giving them power that mimics. There's a godlike being that is granting them power that looks like it's good, but it isn't. Yeah, Mythos says, or great and terrible powers from the other god. Exactly. And it looks like a healing flame, but it isn't. It's just a temporary thing. What if the healing that the players receive goes away after when the sun goes down and the true evil shows up, because this pit fiend or whatever as a patron is actually doing it, and it's not real healing, it's just an illusion, and their wounds open up and their broken bones come back or something. That'd be kind of nasty too. So anyway, we're heading towards the hour mark. Thank you, Caius. By the way, if you're not part of Absolute Tabletop, please join the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. Yeah, I'm pushing that. And look out for Caius of Glantry's posts. Always insightful, always re-flavoring and reshaping what it is that is in our gaming, how we look at our gaming, the things that we find very commonly or take for granted. So yeah, look that up. And Vito says, your wife's great, letting you geek out with us. Yeah, every day, as a matter of fact, Monday through Friday. So I love her. So guys, have a great one. Thank you for joining me. Yes, Melisandre, maybe that's not one of your favorite Game of Thrones characters, or you're like, who? The Red Priestess, the Lord of Light. I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, yeah, we can go into it. So guys, thank you very much. I will see thee tomorrow. I believe Jon Snow is tomorrow. And then next week we go back to the Avengers. So guys, have a great one. I will see thee later.